The Atheist Debates Patreon Project presents another look at Doubting Thomas. Final video for this month. I hope you guys are doing well and that you've managed to get some stuff out of the content this month and every month. And by the way, if you're not subscribed, you can like and subscribe. You can go to patreon.com/atheistdebates and support what I'm doing here. This is a relatively simple, straightforward one that takes another look at the Doubting Thomas narrative. The standard skeptic dialogue is something we'll definitely address here as well, which is, oh, he's like a token skeptic. He's there so that the narrative has somebody for doubters to connect with, and specifically to discourage doubt. And I agree with those assessments, and we'll be talking about those, but I think there's a bit more here that we can actually do. Because while they may have needed to include a doubter, a skeptic, so that those people who doubt could place themselves in the narrative of, ooh, that's the question I would have asked. That is there to build a level of trust that is wholly unwarranted. But does the story make sense at all? What would have happened if, etc. So the narrative here is, did Thomas know of Jesus' teachings about him rising after 3 days? Now, the Doubting Thomas narrative exists only in the Gospel of John. It does not exist in the three synoptic Gospels. It's in John chapter 20. It's after the resurrection, and it's just 6 verses. I'll just read them. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. Jesus had already appeared to the others of the disciples. The other disciples therefore said unto him, Thomas, we have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, except I shall see his hands and the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days, again, his disciples were within, and Thomas was with them. And then Jesus showed up, the doors were shut, and stood in the midst and said, peace be unto you. And he said to Thomas, reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. And Thomas answered and said unto him, my Lord and my God. And Jesus said unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen, and yet have believed. And then the final 2 verses of chapter 20 add something to the story that says, and many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in the book. But these are written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing ye might have life through his name. So basically it says, hey, Thomas believed, you should believe. And he did a bunch more miracles for us that we're not going to talk about. So the first question I have is, did Thomas know of Jesus' teachings? Well, let's just stick with the Gospel of John, because the doubting narrative doesn't apply to the synoptic Gospels. John 2, verses 18 through 22, so the Jews answered and said, what sign do you show us since you do these things? And Jesus said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Then the Jews said, it's taken 46 years to build this temple. Will you raise it up in 3 days? But he was speaking about his temple of his body. When therefore he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he said this, and they believed the scripture and the word with which Jesus had spoken. Also in John chapter 10, verses 17 and 18, it says, therefore my Father loves me, it's Jesus speaking, because I lay down my life that I might take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have authority to lay it down and have authority to take it again. Those 2 passages from John are Jesus saying, you guys aren't going to kill me. I'm going to give up my life, and I'm going to take it back in 3 days. To see the scope and reach of this, because maybe Thomas wasn't around for any of those, somehow Thomas didn't hear about this claim, it was widespread enough. We'll jump out of the Gospel of Matthew or out of John for a moment and into Matthew, because in Matthew 27, the priests and the Pharisees knew what he had said that John reports in chapter 2, verses 18 through 22. And so they say, hey, this guy says he's going to resurrect himself in 3 days. Obviously, we don't believe that. We don't want his disciples to do anything. So let's seal the tomb with a big rock that they can't roll away, so that, after 3 days, he definitely won't be raised. That's another narrative device where somebody is trying to make sure that there's nothing nefarious going on. We're closing narrative doors. We're closing loopholes like a magician, showing you, let me turn it around and show you the backside. I'll show you the top. I'll show you underneath. Here, let me open it up and show you the inside. Let me close it. And then boom, there's a rabbit. If we've knocked down the various ways we think it could be achieved, then you can fall for the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle fallacy of presuming that you've eliminated all other explanations and it just must be a miracle. But today I want to pretend that we are Thomas for a second. We are a disciple of Jesus. We've known him, listened to him, worked alongside of him, helped him preach his message, help him reach people. We are among the most inner circle devout friends and followers and disciples of him that exist. Presumably, Thomas, like the other disciples, believed that Jesus was the Messiah, that he was going to do what he said he was going to do. And so we're off one day, and all these other people that we've been working with for years come and say, hey, Jesus is back. We saw him. We interacted with him. Now, if we're a believer and we're expecting him to rise from the dead, and we're expecting this to happen, and we believe this has happened, then when our friends come to us and tell us that it happened, I'm not quite sure why it would be so negative. It seems a little out of character to just be like, I absolutely will not believe he's back until I can finger his holes. Well, the holes in his hands and his side. Why? You already believe, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're a doubter on that too. Maybe you never really believed what Jesus said. But why would you assume there would be holes? If Thomas had met Jesus and not been able to see or touch the holes, would he have claimed that this wasn't Jesus? Let's say you've got a friend that you've known for a couple of years. You've worked together, and he dies, and somebody says, ooh, he's coming back, and he walks in the room. Wouldn't the de facto interaction with that person, seeing their face, being in their presence, hearing their voice, hearing their mannerisms, it's not like, what's the reasonable suspicion that this is a fraud? Did Jesus have a twin brother? Is that what it is? Did Jesus have a twin brother? And by the way, if somebody's trying to con you by having a twin brother come in and pretend to be Jesus, surely they could have poked holes in his hands and put a wound in the side. But why would they need to? Would he suspect that it's a demon? If it was some kind of scam, wouldn't we just also pierce the hands of whoever we were going to use to pull the scam off? And who all's in on it? If Jesus can beat death, why can't he beat the wounds? Why would anybody expect there to be holes? Thomas, before he's seen Jesus, is saying, I won't believe it unless he's still wounded. That's like saying, I won't believe he's back from the dead unless he's still dead. Why would anybody presume that the guy who can beat death can't and healed the blind, raised the dead, can't heal little wounds on his hand? Thomas is a poor skeptic because he was written by a poor skeptic. It's basically a narrative device to hang a lantern on, hey, how do you know it was him? A plot hole bigger than the hole in Jesus's hand or side. There's so many holes here. Holes in his hands, holes in the side, holes in the story. Thomas exists to keep you from asking more questions, to keep you from asking, how does any of this make sense? And what reason do I have to believe that it's real? It's there to keep you from saying, why doesn't Jesus appear to me right now? Why does he prove himself to Thomas and then appear to Saul on the road to Damascus, but the rest of us get nothing? Oh, because Jesus said, blessed are they who haven't seen and yet believe. Why? Why are we blessed to be gullible? Why are we blessed to believe without sufficient evidence? Why is Jesus playing favorites with Thomas and the disciples and Saul? And yet now, all this time later, we're supposed to believe not only was he resurrected, but he still exists and he's part of the Godhead and knows and cares who we are and what we do. The Bible is supporting gullibility with a weak skeptic and a slick way of saying, hey, Mr. Skeptic, we've already proven this to another skeptic. Stop having such a high bar of evidence. Just believe. No thanks. I deserve the same access to confirmation that Thomas or Saul did. Otherwise, my rational position cannot be justified in the same way that theirs are. And as David Hume pointed out, revelation is necessarily first person, and to everybody else it's hearsay. So Thomas's revelation, Thomas's interaction, Thomas's demonstration does the rest of us no good. And any God that understood epistemology would understand that that is the case. That I should not believe based on what I've reported, or I've had what's been reported to me that somebody else believed. Any God that understood this stuff would know that that's a problem, and would also know that I would be sitting here today pointing out that this is a narrative device to make you not ask questions, to discourage you from being the skeptic you should be. The thing to remember is that this is all still stories in a book. The prediction, the priest's responses, the claimed resurrection, the doubter, the end of the doubt, all is a narrative construct for the reader. And none of it is evidence for anything. It is all red herrings for an unproven, untestable, unfalsifiable claim, which makes its truth value unknown and seemingly unknowable. And if that's the case, how can Christians say that they know that they know that they know that they know? They don't. We'll see you next time.